What happens when a species that has never known true warfare meets the descendants of Earth's most brutal conflicts? When beings who settle disputes with ritual combat encounter humans who turn destruction into an art form. In the vast expanse of the Galactic Council's territory, where 847 civilized species coexist in harmony, first contact protocols are a mere formality. Every species follows the same pattern: cautious approach, peaceful intentions, technological exchange, and integration into the cosmic community. It's been this way for over 12,000 years. But, on the edge of known space, something is about to shatter every assumption the galaxy holds about civilization, warfare, and what it truly means to survive. The humans are coming, and they're bringing with them the accumulated fury of 10,000 years of conflict. When their warship drops out of hyperspace, it won't just be making first contact, it will be rewriting the rules of galactic civilization forever. The question isn't whether humanity will join the Galactic Council. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for humanity. Commander Zefkar adjusted his ceremonial robes as he stood on the bridge of the Galactic Council vessel. Harmony's voice. As the designated first contact specialist for Sector 7749, he had overseen 43 successful integrations of new species into the galactic community. Each encounter followed the same predictable pattern: initial caution, peaceful dialogue, technology assessment, and, finally, celebration as another civilization joined the great cosmic family. Today should have been no different. The scanners had detected a single vessel approaching from the unexplored regions beyond the outer rim. Standard protocol dictated a welcoming committee of 3 council ships, each representing a different branch of galactic civilization. The Harmony's voice represented diplomatic relations, while the research vessel Gentle Inquiry would handle technological assessment. The escort frigate Protective Embrace was purely ceremonial, its weapons systems long since converted to sensor arrays and communication equipment. Contact approaching on Vector 77 Mark IV, announced Navigation Officer Plix, her forearms dancing across the control surfaces with practiced ease. Estimated time to optimal communication range, 14 minutes. Zethkar's scaled head nodded approvingly. Excellent. Begin broadcasting the standard welcome protocol on all frequencies. Multiple languages, multiple formats, all the usual mathematical and scientific foundations for establishing communication. The bridge crew went about their tasks with calm efficiency. This was routine. In over 12,000 years of galactic civilization, first contact had never been anything but routine. The most aggressive species they'd ever encountered were the Vorthani, who settled disputes through elaborate dance competitions. The most warlike were the Kethmor, who engaged in ritualized mock battles with foam weapons during their mating season. Dr. Yalera, the ship's xenobiologist, approached Zethkar with her usual enthusiasm. Her species, the crystalline Charoni, literally glowed with excitement, their translucent skin pulsing with soft blue light. Commander, I've been reviewing the preliminary scans. The vessel's design is unlike anything in our databases. The materials appear to be some form of refined metallic alloy, incredibly dense. And the energy signatures, they're fascinating. Almost primitive in some ways, yet remarkably efficient. Primitive how? Zethkar inquired, his interest piqued. The Galactic Council prided itself on technological diversity, but truly primitive species were rare this far from the galactic core. Their propulsion system seems to rely on controlled matter-antimatter reactions. We haven't seen that technology in common use for over 8,000 years. Most species develop quantum fold drives long before they achieve interstellar travel. Yet their implementation appears remarkably sophisticated for such an archaic approach. Before Zethkar could respond, Communications Officer Threnoke suddenly straightened at his station, his serpentine neck extending in alarm. Commander, I'm receiving a response to our welcome broadcast. Excellent. Audio translation ready? Yes, sir, but... Threnoke hesitated, his forked tongue flickering nervously. The response is unusual. They're not following any recognized first contact protocols. They're transmitting what appears to be a warning. Zethkar's confidence wavered slightly. In 43 encounters, no species had ever responded with a warning. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that sent an unexpected chill through the seasoned diplomat. The tone was deep, controlled, and carried an underlying quality that no council species possessed, something that spoke of terrible experience and hard-earned wisdom. Unknown vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation warship Indomitable. You are broadcasting in the clear on multiple frequencies in what appears to be a first contact scenario. We acknowledge your peaceful intentions and respond in kind. However, be advised that our ship is heavily armed and our crew is trained for combat operations. We mean you no harm, but we are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. Please maintain your current distance while we establish proper communication protocols. The bridge fell silent. Several officers exchanged confused glances. Dr. Yalera's blue glow flickered uncertainly. Did they say warship? Whispered Plix. Zethkar had heard the term in historical archives. Some of the earliest council species had used such vessels in their pre-civilization periods, but those were primitive affairs used for settling resource disputes on their homeworlds. No species had built dedicated military vessels for millennia. Commander, Threnoke's voice carried a note of bewilderment. They're asking us to identify our military capabilities and defensive posture. I don't understand the context of their questions. Tell them we have no military capabilities, Zethkar replied automatically. Explain that we're a peaceful diplomatic mission representing the Galactic Council. There was a long pause before the human voice returned, and this time it carried a quality that made every being on the bridge unconsciously take a step back. Did you say you have no military capabilities? No weapons? No defensive systems? No escort vessels with combat capability? That's correct, Zethkar responded, his confidence returning. This was obviously a species still struggling with their primitive violent instincts. The Council had helped hundreds of species overcome such tendencies. We are a civilization of peace. We have evolved beyond the need for weapons or warfare. Our escort vessel is purely ceremonial. Another pause, longer this time. When the human responded, there was something in her voice that none of the Council species could identify, a mixture of disbelief, concern, and something else. Something that spoke of knowledge they didn't possess. Commander, you're traveling in open space with no weapons, no shields, no defensive capabilities whatsoever? How do you survive encounters with hostile forces? How do you protect your territory? Your trade routes? Your colonies? Dr. Yalera stepped forward. Commander, I don't think they understand. Should I explain about the Galactic Peace Accords? Zethkar nodded. Unknown vessel, this is Dr. Yalera, xenobiologist of the Galactic Council. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. In our region of space, we have no hostile forces. All 847 member species of the Galactic Council coexist in perfect harmony. We resolved our last territorial dispute over 4,000 years ago through mediation and compromise. Warfare is obsolete. The silence that followed stretched on for nearly 2 full minutes. When the human finally responded, her voice carried a quality that made the bridge crew unconsciously move closer together. Dr. Yalera, are you telling me that in your region of space, there are no pirates? No raiders? No territorial conflicts? No resource wars? No species that might attack you simply because you're different or because they want what you have? That's correct, Yalera replied, her blue glow brightening with pride. We have achieved true civilization. Such barbaric concepts are relics of our primitive past. And, you're approaching an unknown vessel from unexplored space with this philosophy? Before anyone could respond, the tactical display suddenly came alive with proximity alarms. The unknown vessel had been maintaining its distance, but now something was happening. Plix's forearms moved frantically across her controls. Commander, the unknown vessel is. I'm not sure how to describe this. It's deploying some kind of external structures. The ship is transforming. On the main display, they watched in fascination as the human vessel began to unfold. What they had initially taken for a simple if unusual design was revealed to be something far more complex. Sections of the hull slid apart with mechanical precision, revealing arrays of structures that none of them could identify. The ship's profile doubled in size as weapon systems extended from hidden bays, sensor arrays deployed, and, what appeared to be some kind of defensive field generators came online. "Magnificent," breathed Dr. Yalera. "It's like watching a flower bloom, but made of metal and energy." Navigation Officer Plix was studying her readings with growing confusion. "Commander, the energy signatures from that vessel have increased by a factor of 12. Whatever those systems are, they're drawing massive amounts of power." The human voice returned, and now it carried a tone of professional authority that somehow commanded respect across species barriers. "Council vessels, this is Captain Chen. We have deployed defensive systems as a precautionary measure. We mean you no harm, but we must inform you that you are approaching a military vessel of the Terran Federation Navy. The Indomitable is a Devastator-class heavy cruiser designed for deep space operations in hostile territory. We are equipped with fusion missiles, particle beam weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and defensive measures including reactive armor and energy shields. Our crew of 800 includes 200 combat marines trained for boarding actions and ground assault." Dr. Yalera's glow had shifted to a pale green that indicated confusion and concern. "Commander, I don't understand most of those terms, but the energy readings suggest they're not exaggerating about their capabilities." Zethkar felt a growing unease that he couldn't quite name. In his long career, he had never encountered a species that maintained such elaborate preparations for violence. Even the most primitive species they'd contacted had been essentially peaceful, with conflicts limited to minor territorial disputes or resource competition. "Captain Chen," he broadcast, "we appreciate your honesty about your capabilities, but we must ask why your species maintains such elaborate preparations for conflict? Surely intelligent beings can resolve disputes through dialogue and compromise?" The pause that followed was the longest yet. When Captain Chen finally responded, her voice carried weight of experience that somehow transcended the barrier of species difference. "Commander, we maintain these preparations because the universe is vast and full of uncertainties. In our experience, intelligent beings are capable of great nobility and terrible cruelty, often simultaneously. We hope for the best from every encounter, but we prepare for the worst. It's kept our species alive for a very long time." "But surely," Dr. Yalera interjected, "once a species achieves space travel and makes contact with other civilizations, they learn to coexist peacefully? Violence becomes unnecessary when there are infinite resources among the stars?" Another pause, and when the human responded, there was something almost gentle in her voice, as if she were explaining something difficult to a child. "Doctor, space may be infinite, but resources are not always freely available. Territory matters when you're trying to protect trade routes or establish colonies. And some beings attack not because they need what you have, but because they can. Because they enjoy it. Because they see peaceful species as easy prey." The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. These concepts were so foreign to their understanding of civilization that they struggled to process them. "Captain Chen," Zethkar said carefully, "are you saying that your species expects to encounter hostile forces in space?" "Commander, we don't expect to encounter hostile forces. We expect to encounter unknown forces. Sometimes they turn out to be hostile. Sometimes they turn out to be peaceful. We prepare for both possibilities." Suddenly, Tactical Officer Gren Th, who had been quietly monitoring scanner readings, spoke up with concern. "Commander, I'm detecting additional energy signatures in the area. Multiple contacts approaching from various vectors." Zethkar's scaled brow furrowed. "Additional contacts? Are they council vessels? Perhaps a delayed response to our first contact beacon?" "Negative, sir. These signatures don't match any known council vessel types. And they're not responding to our identification requests." The main display updated to show the tactical situation. 7 new contacts were converging on their position from different directions, their approach vectors clearly coordinated. Unlike the human vessel, which had approached openly and maintained distance, these new ships were moving with obvious tactical intent. Captain Chen's voice cut through the growing tension. "Council vessels, we're detecting the same contacts on our screens. 7 ships, unknown configuration, approaching in what appears to be a coordinated attack formation. We're reading weapon signatures from all 7 vessels." Dr. Yalera's glow had shifted to a pale yellow that indicated fear. "Attack formation? But, that's impossible. There are no aggressive species in this sector. The nearest uncontacted systems are thousands of light-years away. Commander, Grentiach's voice was tight with confusion. The approaching vessels are powering weapons systems. I'm reading energy signatures consistent with plasma cannons and missile launchers. These are definitely military vessels. Zethkar felt a cold dread spreading through his scaled form. This was outside all known parameters. The Galactic Council's region of space had been peaceful for millennia. There were no aggressive species, no military vessels, no threats that required defensive measures. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Unknown vessels are not responding to our hails and are approaching in attack formation. Council vessels, I strongly recommend you withdraw to a safe distance immediately. But, we don't have escort protocols for military threats, Plix whispered. Our evacuation procedures assume mechanical failure or natural phenomena, not this. Before anyone could respond, the lead attacking vessel opened fire. A brilliant lance of plasma energy sliced through space, missing the Harmony's voice by less than a kilometer. The bridge shook slightly from the thermal wash. They're shooting at us. Dr. Yalera's voice rose in pitch, her crystalline form now glowing bright red with panic. But, we're a diplomatic vessel. We're clearly marked as non-combatants. This is impossible. Captain Chen's voice cut through their panic with cold professional authority. All Council vessels, execute emergency withdrawal immediately. Move to coordinates I'm transmitting now. Indomitable will cover your withdrawal. Cover our withdrawal? Zethkar stammered. What does that mean? His question was answered when the human warship suddenly accelerated forward, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace. As it passed between the Council vessels and the attacking force, it unleashed its first salvo. The night sky erupted in controlled destruction. Streams of particles invisible to the naked eye reached out at near-light speed, while missiles accelerated away from the human ship at velocities that stressed the limits of their sensors. The attacking vessels, which had seemed so threatening moments before, suddenly found themselves facing something they clearly hadn't expected. The lead attacker took a direct hit from what Captain Chen had called a particle beam weapon. Its shields flared and collapsed within seconds, and the beam continued through its hull like a knife through paper. The ship broke apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up local space. Impossible, whispered Grentiach. That ship had military-grade shielding. How did the humans penetrate it so easily? A second attacker launched a spread of missiles at the human vessel, but the Indomitable's defensive systems engaged with mechanical precision. Point defense lasers swept space clear of incoming projectiles while the ship's main guns targeted the launcher. Another brief engagement, another explosion. The remaining 5 attackers seemed to realize they had encountered something beyond their experience. They began evasive maneuvers, but the human ship pursued them with relentless efficiency. It was clear that this wasn't just superior technology at work, but superior tactical doctrine. The humans fought like they had been doing it for millennia. Within 10 minutes, it was over. 5 of the 7 attacking ships had been destroyed outright. The remaining 2 had fled into hyperspace when it became clear they were hopelessly outmatched. The human warship returned to its previous position, its weapon systems retracting with the same mechanical precision they had deployed with. Captain Chen's voice returned to its earlier professional tone. Council vessels, area is secure. Unknown hostiles have been neutralized or driven off. Are there any casualties or damage among your ships? Zethkar stared at the display, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. In less than 15 minutes, his understanding of galactic civilization had been completely overturned. Aggressive species did exist in their region of space. Military action was sometimes necessary for survival. And, somewhere in the galaxy was a species that had developed warfare into a science. Captain Chen, he finally managed, we have no casualties. Our ships are unharmed. But, we don't understand. How did you know? How did you respond so quickly? How did you defeat them so easily? Commander, we've been monitoring this region for several weeks. We detected signs of what appeared to be predatory activity, ships going missing, distress calls that ended abruptly, colonies going silent. We came to investigate. When we detected your diplomatic mission approaching the same area where these disappearances had occurred, we positioned ourselves to intervene if necessary. Dr. Yalera found her voice, though it trembled with shock. Captain, those ships that attacked us, what were they? What species builds vessels like that? Based on our analysis, they appear to be raiders of some kind. Probably a multi-species group that preys on peaceful shipping and isolated colonies. Their technology suggests they're from this region originally, but they've been operating in the shadows of your civilization for some time. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. You mean they've been here all along? Hiding in our space? Attacking our people? It appears so. Your peaceful civilization created an environment where predators could operate with impunity. Ships disappear, colonies go silent, and your people assume it's equipment failure or natural disaster. Because you have no concept of organized violence, you never investigated these incidents as potential attacks. The bridge of the Harmony's voice fell silent as the crew contemplated this revelation. Their perfect civilization, their proud achievement of evolving beyond violence, had left them completely vulnerable to those who had not abandoned such methods. Captain Chen, Zethkar said quietly, how many of our people do you think have died because of our naivety? I don't know, Commander. But, based on the evidence we've gathered, it's been going on for decades. Maybe longer. As the reality of their situation sank in, Zethkar found himself looking at the human warship with new eyes. What he had initially seen as a primitive vessel bristling with obsolete weapons, he now recognized as something far more sophisticated. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement of philosophy. It said that its builders understood the universe as it truly was, not as they wished it to be. Captain Chen, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, what happens now? Captain Sarah Chen stood in her command chair, watching the sensor displays that showed the 3 council vessels maintaining their distance. Her ship, the Indomitable, had secured the immediate area, but her mind was already working through the larger implications of what had just occurred. In her 23 years of naval service, she had seen many first contact scenarios, but none quite like this. Captain, called Lieutenant Commander Torres from the tactical station, long-range sensors are picking up debris fields at coordinates 77 Mark 12 and 92 Mark 8. The scatter patterns are consistent with ship destruction, not natural phenomena. How old? Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Preliminary analysis suggests multiple events over the past 18 months. Based on the decay patterns of the metal signatures, we're looking at least 12 separate incidents. Chen nodded grimly. The evidence was mounting that the Council's peaceful civilization had been under predation for far longer than they realized. Commander Hayes, what's our status on the prisoners from the disabled raider vessel? Commander Hayes, the ship's Marine Detachment leader, stepped forward with his usual crisp efficiency. We recovered 17 survivors before their ship's autodestruct engaged. They're a mixed group, 3 different species, all of them from systems within Council space. Initial interrogation suggests they've been operating as raiders for over 40 years. 40 years, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the ship's xenosociologist, said with obvious disgust. Captain, if they've been active that long, the death toll among Council civilians could be enormous. Chen turned to the communications station. Lieutenant Park, patch me through to Commander Zethkar. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Council vessel. The alien diplomat looked visibly shaken, his scales having taken on a pale gray coloration that Chen's briefings had taught her indicated distress among his species. Commander Zethkar, Chen began, her voice carefully controlled, we need to discuss the situation in more detail. Would you be willing to come aboard our vessel for a briefing? We have information that your government needs to see. Zethkar hesitated, clearly struggling with concepts that had no place in his worldview. Captain Chen, our protocols don't include procedures for boarding military vessels. We have no experience with such things. Dr. Warren stepped into view of the camera. Commander, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Warren, xenosociologist aboard the Indomitable. I understand this is difficult, but the evidence we've gathered suggests that the attacks on your people have been systematic and ongoing for decades. If we're going to help protect your civilization, we need to share intelligence and coordinate our efforts. Help protect our civilization? Dr. Yalera's voice could be heard from off-camera. But, we've achieved perfect peace. We don't need protection. Chen saw Dr. Warren's jaw tighten slightly. The xenosociologist had spent her entire career studying peaceful species, but she had also seen what happened when such species encountered genuine predators. Dr. Yalera, Warren said gently, I understand that your civilization has achieved internal peace. That's a remarkable accomplishment. But peace within your society doesn't guarantee safety from external threats. The raiders we just defeated have been exploiting your peaceful nature for their own gain. On the screen, they could see several council officers exchanging confused and distressed looks. Navigation Officer Plix spoke up, her forearms gesturing helplessly. But, how is that possible? Our sensor networks monitor all traffic in council space. We would know if hostile forces were operating in our territory. Commander Torres looked up from his tactical station. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to explain something to our guests. Chen nodded, and Torres stepped forward to address the council officers. Commander Plix, your sensor networks are designed to monitor commercial traffic and coordinate peaceful activities. They're not configured to detect stealth operations or military reconnaissance. The raiders we just fought were using sensor masking technology and operating from hidden bases in asteroid fields and nebulae. Your sensors were never intended to find such operations. Hidden bases? Zethkar's voice cracked slightly. In our space? For 40 years? Based on the intelligence we've gathered, yes, Chen confirmed. Commander, I strongly urge you to accept our invitation. What we need to show you can't be effectively communicated over comm channels. After a long pause and what appeared to be a heated discussion among the council bridge crew, Zethkar finally nodded. Very well, Captain Chen. I'll come aboard with Dr. Yalera and Navigation Officer Plix. But, I must warn you, we have no experience with military protocols. We may inadvertently violate your customs. Understood, Commander. We'll provide guidance. Stand by for transport coordinates. 30 minutes later, Chen stood in the Indomitable's main briefing room, watching as 3 alien beings materialized on the transport pad. She had to admit that despite her extensive experience with first contact situations, she felt a certain fascination with these council species. Their body language and vocalizations suggested a level of genuine naivety about violence that her own species had lost millennia ago. Commander Zethkar was a tall, humanoid reptilian with scales that shifted color based on his emotional state. Dr. Yalera appeared to be some kind of crystalline being whose translucent body glowed with internal light. Navigation Officer Plix was the most alien of the three, with 4 arms, large multifaceted eyes, and what appeared to be a chitinous exoskeleton. Welcome aboard the Indomitable, Chen said, stepping forward with her command staff. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. This is Commander Hayes, our Marine Detachment Leader, Dr. Warren, our xenosociologist, and Commander Torres, our tactical officer. The council officers looked around the briefing room with obvious curiosity. The human military aesthetic was clearly foreign to them, functional rather than decorative, with displays showing tactical information and weapon status rather than artistic arrangements. Captain, Zethkar said, his scales slowly shifting back toward their normal blue-green coloration, I must ask, is your entire ship designed for warfare? This is a military vessel, yes, Chen replied. Every system is designed either for combat operations or to support combat operations. Would you like a brief explanation of our capabilities before we proceed to the intelligence briefing? Dr. Yalera's internal glow brightened with curiosity. Yes, please. We've never seen a dedicated military vessel before. Commander Torres stepped forward to a wall display that showed a cutaway diagram of the Indomitable. The ship is 800 meters long with a crew of 800. The forward section houses our primary weapon systems, fusion missile launchers, particle beam arrays, and kinetic bombardment systems. The central section contains crew quarters, life support, and command facilities. The aft section houses our power plant, engines, and manufacturing facilities. Manufacturing facilities? Plix asked, her compound eyes focusing intently on the display. We can manufacture our own ammunition, spare parts, and basic supplies, Torres explained. Military vessels must be self-sufficient for extended operations far from friendly territory. How long can you operate independently? Zethkar inquired. With normal rationing, approximately 18 months. In emergency conditions, we can extend that to 2 years. The council officers exchanged looks of amazement. Dr. Yalera's glow shifted to a bright blue that Chen's briefings indicated was excitement. 18 months? Our vessels require resupply every few weeks. How do you store so much material? Efficiency and planning, Hayes interjected. Every kilogram aboard this ship has a purpose. Every system is designed for maximum reliability with minimum maintenance. When you expect to encounter hostile forces, you can't afford to depend on regular supply lines. Dr. Warren gestured toward the conference table. Perhaps we should proceed to the intelligence briefing. What we've discovered about the Raiders' operations is quite disturbing. As they took seats around the table, Chen noticed that the council officers seemed uncomfortable with the formal military atmosphere. Their own diplomatic traditions apparently favored more relaxed, informal discussions. Before we begin, Chen said, I want you to understand that what we're about to show you may be difficult to process. Your species have achieved something remarkable in creating a peaceful civilization. But, that achievement has left you vulnerable to predators who don't share your values. The main display activated, showing a star chart of council space with various markers indicating incident locations. Over the past 6 months, our deep reconnaissance units have been investigating reports of missing ships and silent colonies throughout this region. What we've discovered is a systematic predation campaign. Dr. Warren took over the presentation. The raiders operate in small groups, typically 3 to 5 ships. They target isolated vessels and remote colonies, focusing on valuable cargo and personnel who can be sold into slavery. They use sensor masking technology to avoid detection and maintain hidden bases in regions your survey teams haven't explored. Slavery? Dr. Yalera's voice was barely a whisper, her internal glow dimming to almost nothing. But slavery was abolished throughout council space over 8,000 years ago. Not in the hidden systems where these raiders operate, Commander Torres said grimly. We've identified at least 6 slave markets operating in asteroid belts and rogue planets within your claimed territory. The raiders have been capturing council citizens and selling them to buyers from outside your region of space. Navigation Officer Plix's compound eyes were fixed on the display showing the locations of missing ships. These coordinates. I recognize some of them. Ships that were reported as lost due to navigation errors or mechanical failures. None of them were accidents, Chen confirmed. Every one was an attack. Your peaceful society simply doesn't have the conceptual framework to recognize organized predation, so your investigators concluded that the disappearances were due to natural causes. Zethkar's scales had shifted to a deep gray that indicated profound distress. How many of our people have been taken? Dr. Warren consulted her datapad. Based on our analysis of the raiders' operations and the capacity of the slave markets we've identified, we estimate approximately 15,000 council citizens have been captured over the past 40 years. About 60% were probably sold to buyers outside this region. The others? She paused, clearly reluctant to continue. The others what? Dr. Yalera asked, though her tone suggested she dreaded the answer. The others were killed during capture operations, died in captivity, or were executed when they proved unsuitable for slavery. The briefing room fell silent. Chen watched as the 3 council officers struggled to process information that challenged everything they believed about their civilization and their place in the universe. Commander Hayes leaned forward, his expression grim but sympathetic. Commander Zethkar, I know this is difficult, but there's more. The raiders have been expanding their operations. The attack you witnessed today was part of a larger offensive. They're becoming bolder, targeting diplomatic missions and major shipping routes. Why? Plix asked, her voice hollow. Why would anyone do this? What do they gain that couldn't be obtained through trade and cooperation? Chen exchanged glances with her officers. How did you explain the concept of evil to beings who had never encountered it? Dr. Warren answered carefully. Some beings are motivated by profit without concern for the suffering they cause. Others enjoy the exercise of power over helpless victims. And some simply take what they want because they can. Your peaceful civilization represents an ideal target, wealthy, undefended, and psychologically incapable of effective resistance. Zethkar suddenly stood, his scales shifting through several colors in rapid succession. We have to warn the Council immediately. Alert all ships, all colonies. Begin emergency defensive measures. Commander, Chen said gently, what defensive measures? Your ships have no weapons. Your colonies have no shields or fortifications. Your security forces are trained for riot control and natural disaster response, not military combat. The reality of their situation seemed to hit Zethkar like a physical blow. He slowly sank back into his chair, his scales settling into a pale, defeated gray. We're helpless, he whispered. Our entire civilization is defenseless against anyone willing to use violence. Dr. Yalera's glow had dimmed to almost nothing. 40 years. 15,000 of our people. And we never knew. We never even suspected. It's not your fault, Dr. Warren said firmly. Your species made a conscious choice to evolve beyond violence. That's admirable. But evolution is an ongoing process, and environments change. When new predators enter an ecosystem, the prey species must adapt or perish. Commander Torres brought up a new display showing the Raiders' network of hidden bases. The good news is that now we know about the threat, we can do something about it. The bad news is that your civilization lacks the military infrastructure to deal with this level of organized predation. What are you suggesting? Dr. Yalera asked, though her tone suggested she was beginning to understand. You need protection, Chen said simply. Either you develop your own military capabilities, or you accept protection from those who already possess such capabilities. Zethkar looked up, his scales brightening slightly with hope. You would protect us? Your people would defend Council space against these raiders? That's one option, Chen confirmed. The Terran Federation has extensive experience dealing with organized piracy and predation. We could deploy naval units to patrol your space and eliminate the raider bases. What would you want in return? Plix asked suspiciously. Commander Hayes smiled slightly. Commander, we're not raiders ourselves. We don't operate on a profit motive when it comes to protecting innocent civilians. However, any long-term defense arrangement would require formal agreements between our governments. There would be cultural exchange, Dr. Warren added. Trade agreements, technology sharing, perhaps joint colonization efforts. The Terran Federation is always interested in expanding peaceful relationships with other civilizations. Dr. Yalera's glow began to brighten again. But, what about our principles? Our commitment to peace? If we accept military protection, are we abandoning everything we've achieved? Chen considered her answer carefully. This was the crucial moment, she realized. How she responded could determine whether these species maintained their identity while gaining necessary protection, or whether they would be forced to abandon their peaceful nature entirely. Dr. Yalera, she said finally, there's a difference between choosing peace and having peace imposed upon you by superior force. Your civilization chose to evolve beyond violence because you recognized that cooperation produces better outcomes than conflict. That's wisdom, not weakness. But, accepting military protection is recognizing that not everyone in the universe shares your wisdom, Chen finished. You can maintain your peaceful society while acknowledging that sometimes violence is necessary to defend that society from those who would destroy it. Commander Torres stood and moved to the star chart. Think of it this way. In your cities, you don't have weapons or fortifications, but you do have emergency services, police, fire departments, medical teams. They exist not because your citizens are violent or destructive, but because sometimes external threats require specialized responses. Military protection is the same principle applied to interstellar space, Hayes added. You maintain your peaceful civilization, but you have access to specialists trained to deal with violent threats. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment, his scales slowly shifting through different colors as he processed the concepts they were presenting. Finally, he looked up at Chen. Captain, if we were to request Terran Federation protection, how quickly could your forces respond to threats in Council space? We already have 12 vessels conducting reconnaissance in this sector, Chen replied. Within 6 months, we could establish permanent patrol routes and early warning systems. Within a year, we could have the raider network completely eliminated. And our people who have been taken captive? Chen's expression hardened. Recovery of kidnapped civilians is a priority operation. We're already planning rescue missions based on the intelligence we've gathered. Dr. Yalera's glow brightened considerably. You would risk your people's lives to save ours? Doctor, Commander Hayes said quietly, that's what we do. It's why we exist. Some things are worth fighting for, and the lives of innocent beings are always worth fighting for. The 3 council officers exchanged looks, and Chen could see that they were beginning to understand. The universe was more complex and dangerous than they had believed, but they weren't helpless. They had choices, and they had potential allies who understood both the value of peace and the necessity of strength. The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Galactic Council had not seen such turmoil in over 4,000 years. Representatives from 847 species filled the vast amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of confusion, fear, and heated debate. At the center of it all, Commander Zethkar stood before the council speaker's podium, his scales shifting through patterns of stress coloration that reflected his inner turmoil. High Speaker Mordain, an ancient being whose crystalline form had presided over the council for nearly 8 centuries, called for order with a harmonic tone that resonated through the chamber. The various species gradually quieted, though the tension remained palpable. Commander Zethkar, Mordain's voice carried the weight of millennia. You have presented this council with information that challenges our most fundamental beliefs about our civilization. Before we proceed, we must verify these claims. Zethkar activated the holographic display that showed the evidence the humans had shared. Images of destroyed council vessels, hidden raider bases, and the horrifying slave markets appeared in the center of the chamber. Several representatives recoiled from the images, while others leaned forward in disbelief. Honored Speaker, Zethkar began, his voice carefully controlled despite his obvious distress. I understand the difficulty in accepting this information. 3 days ago, I would have dismissed such claims as impossible. But I have seen the evidence with my own eyes. I have witnessed the destruction of peaceful council vessels by armed raiders. I have reviewed the intelligence gathered by the Terran Federation regarding systematic predation in our space. Representative Kielnara of the Gentle Winds Collective, her ethereal form shimmering with agitation, spoke first. Commander, you ask us to believe that for 40 years, organized raiders have been operating in our space, capturing our people, destroying our vessels, and we never knew? How is such a thing possible? Dr. Yalera, who had been granted permission to address the council, stepped forward. Her internal glow was dimmed with what the humans had taught her to recognize as grief. Representative Kielnara, it was possible because we never looked for it. When ships went missing, we assumed mechanical failure. When colonies went silent, we assumed natural disasters. We had no conceptual framework for organized predation because we had eliminated such behavior from our own societies. Admiral Fexmore of the Starfaring Guild, his massive bulk shifting uneasily in his specially designed chair, rumbled his objection. Dr. Yalera, our sensor networks monitor all traffic in Council space. Our investigation teams examine every anomaly. Surely we would have detected hostile activities on this scale. Admiral, Zethkar replied, pulling up tactical displays that the humans had provided. Our sensors are designed to detect and coordinate peaceful traffic. They are not configured to identify stealth technology or recognize military tactics. The raiders have been using sensor masking systems and operating from hidden bases in regions we classified as uninhabitable. Our investigation teams found exactly what they expected to find because they never considered the possibility of intentional deception. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives struggled to process this information. Mordain called for order again, but it took several minutes for calm to return. Representative Yilthara of the Harmonious Collective, her melodic voice carrying across the chamber, asked the question that many were thinking. Commander Zethkar, assuming these claims are accurate, what do you propose we do? We are a civilization of peace. We have no military forces, no weapons, no experience with warfare. How do we respond to such a threat? Before Zethkar could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. "Hi Speaker Mordain, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation warship Indomitable. We are requesting permission to address the Council regarding the security situation in your space." The chamber fell silent. Many representatives had never heard a human voice before, and the controlled authority in Captain Chen's tone was unlike anything in their experience. Mordain's crystalline form pulsed with uncertain colors. "Captain Chen, it is unusual for foreign military forces to address the Council directly. Our protocols." "Hi Speaker," Chen interrupted respectfully, "your protocols were designed for peaceful interactions between civilized species. The current situation requires immediate action to prevent further casualties among your people. We have urgent intelligence regarding planned raider activities that could result in massive civilian casualties within the next 7 days." The mention of imminent danger sent a wave of alarm through the chamber. Representative Vorlak of the Peaceful Traders Union, his forearms gesturing frantically, called out, "Hi Speaker, if there is immediate danger to Council citizens, we must hear this intelligence." After a brief consultation with the Council leadership, Mordain granted permission for Captain Chen to address the Assembly. The main display activated, showing the bridge of the Indomitable, and Chen stepped into view. The representatives stared in fascination at the human captain. Her species was unknown to them, but her bearing and demeanor commanded respect across species barriers. Behind her, they could see other humans working at stations covered with displays showing tactical information. "Honored representatives," Chen began, "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy. 3 days ago, we made first contact with your diplomatic mission while investigating reports of predatory activities in this region. Since then, we have captured several raider vessels and interrogated their crews. The intelligence we've gathered indicates an immediate threat to your civilian population." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed to show a tactical map of Council space. Red markers indicated raider positions, while yellow markers showed planned targets. The raider network has been monitoring Council communications for months. They are aware that we've discovered their operations and are planning a series of major attacks before withdrawing to bases outside your space. Their targets include 3 major colony worlds, 2 important trade hubs, and the Harmonious Collective's annual Peace Festival, which will draw civilian vessels from across the Council. The chamber erupted in horrified exclamations. Representative Yiltharaw's melodic voice rose above the noise. "Captain Chen, the Peace Festival is in 5 days. There will be over 1 million civilians in attendance." "We're aware of that, Representative Yiltharaw. The raiders see it as an opportunity to capture large numbers of valuable slaves in a single operation. According to our intelligence, they're planning to attack during the opening ceremony when all the civilian vessels will be in close formation with minimal maneuvering room." Admiral Fexmore leaned forward, his massive form radiating distress. "Captain, what can be done? We have no military vessels to defend the festival. Our security ships are converted civilian craft with no combat capability." Chen's expression hardened. "Admiral, the Terran Federation is prepared to deploy a naval task force to defend the Peace Festival and neutralize the raider threat. However, such an action would constitute a significant military operation in Sovereign Council space. We require formal authorization from your government." High Speaker Mordain's crystalline form shifted through complex color patterns as he processed this request. "Captain Chen, you are asking us to authorize foreign military forces to conduct warfare in our space. This is unprecedented. High Speaker, the alternative is to allow the raiders to attack over 1 million of your civilians unopposed. Based on their previous operations, we estimate casualties could exceed 300,000, with another 200,000 taken captive." The numbers hit the chamber like a physical blow. Many representatives had never contemplated casualties on such a scale. Their entire understanding of civilization was built around the premise that intelligent beings would never deliberately harm each other in large numbers. Representative Kilnara stood, her ethereal form trembling with emotion. "Captain Chen, if we authorize this military action, what guarantee do we have that Terran forces will withdraw afterward? How do we know you're not conquerors using the raider threat as justification for invasion?" The question sparked angry debates throughout the chamber. Several representatives voiced similar concerns, while others argued that they had no choice but to trust the humans. Chen waited for the noise to die down before responding. Representative Kielnara, I understand your concerns. The Terran Federation has encountered similar situations before, and I can provide you with historical examples of our conduct. In every case where we've provided military assistance to peaceful civilizations, we have honored our commitments and withdrawn when requested. Dr. Warren appeared on screen beside Chen. Representatives, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Warren, xenosociologist. I've spent my career studying peaceful civilizations and the challenges they face when encountering aggressive species. The Terran Federation has a standing policy of protecting peaceful societies from predation. We have defended 17 different civilizations over the past 2 centuries, and, in every case, we have respected their sovereignty and withdrawn when the threat was eliminated. But, what about afterward? Admiral Fexmore rumbled. Even if you eliminate the current raiders, others may take their place. Are we to become dependent on Terran protection indefinitely? Commander Hayes appeared on screen, his military bearing evident even through the communication link. Admiral, that's exactly the question you need to answer as a civilization. The universe contains both peaceful species and predatory ones. You can choose to develop your own defensive capabilities, accept protection from allies, or remain vulnerable to the next group of raiders who discover your weakness. Representative Vorlak spoke up again. Commander Hayes, you speak of developing our own defensive capabilities. But, we are a peaceful civilization. We have evolved beyond the need for weapons and warfare. How can we develop military forces without abandoning our fundamental values? Dr. Warren stepped forward to answer. Representative Vorlak, there's an important distinction between being aggressive and being defensively capable. Aggression involves using force to take what belongs to others or to impose your will on those who disagree with you. Defense involves protecting yourself and others from those who would use force against you. You can maintain your peaceful values while acknowledging that sometimes force is necessary to protect those values, Chen added. The Terran Federation itself was formed by peaceful species who were forced to develop military capabilities to defend against aggressive neighbors. We learned that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice defended by strength. High Speaker Mordain called for order as the debate threatened to become chaotic again. Captain Chen, if the Council were to authorize Terran intervention, what exactly would your operations involve? Chen consulted with someone off-screen before responding. High Speaker, we would deploy a task force of 18 warships to your space. 3 vessels would provide direct protection for the Peace Festival. The remaining 15 would conduct coordinated strikes against the identified raider bases. The operation would take approximately 10 days to complete, after which the raider network in this region would be eliminated. And the captured raiders? Those who surrender will be taken into custody for trial. Those who resist will be destroyed. Any slaves we recover will be returned to their homeworlds and provided with medical and psychological support. The chamber fell silent as representatives contemplated the magnitude of what was being proposed. For a civilization that had not experienced warfare in millennia, the idea of coordinated military action was both terrifying and necessary. Representative Yilthara asked the question that many were thinking. Captain Chen, what will this operation cost? What does the Terran Federation want in return? Representative, the immediate operation will cost nothing. The Terran Federation considers the protection of innocent civilians to be a moral obligation, not a commercial transaction. However, if your government wishes to establish a long-term security arrangement, that would require formal negotiations between our governments. Dr. Yilera stepped forward again. Representatives, I have spent 3 days aboard the Indomitable, observing how a military civilization operates. What I have learned is that strength and compassion are not contradictory. The Terran Federation has developed military capabilities not because they enjoy warfare, but because they understand that some things are worth fighting for. Zethkar nodded in agreement. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten, that true peace requires the strength to defend it. We can maintain our values of cooperation and compassion while acknowledging that sometimes those values must be protected from those who would destroy them. The debate continued for hours, but, gradually, a consensus began to emerge. The raiders represented an existential threat to Council civilization. The traditional peaceful methods of negotiation and compromise were useless against enemies who viewed such approaches as weakness to be exploited. Finally, High Speaker Mordain called for a formal vote. The question before the Council is whether to authorize Terran Federation military forces to conduct operations against raider bases in Council space and provide protection for the Harmonious Collective's Peace Festival. The voting process took nearly an hour as 847 species formally recorded their positions. When it was complete, the result was overwhelming. 756 species voted in favor, 78 opposed, and 13 abstained. Captain Chen, Mordain announced, the Galactic Council formally authorizes Terran Federation military forces to conduct defensive operations in Council space for the purpose of eliminating the raider threat and protecting civilian populations. Chen's expression remained professionally neutral, but those who had learned to read human body language could see her relief. High Speaker, Terran Federation forces will begin deployment immediately. We will coordinate all operations with Council authorities and provide regular updates on our progress. As the communication link closed, the chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The representatives were talking among themselves, trying to process what they had just authorized. For the first time in their recorded history, the Galactic Council had voted to permit warfare in their space. Representative Kielnara approached Sethkar as the session concluded. Commander, do you really believe we've made the right decision? Sethkar's scales had shifted to a deep blue that indicated resolve and determination. Representative, 3 days ago I believed our civilization was perfect. I believed we had evolved beyond the primitive need for violence and that our peaceful nature would protect us from all threats. Now I understand that our peace was not the result of our moral superiority, but of our ignorance of the dangers that existed around us. And now? Now we have the opportunity to maintain our peaceful values while gaining the strength to defend them. The humans have shown us that it's possible to be both compassionate and strong, both peaceful and prepared. Perhaps it's time for the Council to evolve once again. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many were already making plans to contact their homeworlds, to warn their people about the raiders, and to begin the difficult process of rethinking their civilization's approach to security. The age of naive pacifism was ending, but perhaps something stronger and more sustainable was beginning to take its place. Outside the Council chambers, in the depths of space, the raider fleet was already moving toward their targets, unaware that their prey had just acquired protectors who understood warfare far better than they did. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Terran Federation flagship Retribution, watching as his task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Harmonious Collective's festival system. Through the forward viewports, he could see the spectacular sight of over 10,000 Council vessels arranged in elaborate geometric patterns around the gas giant's largest moon, their running lights creating beautiful displays against the starfield. Beautiful, commented Captain Chun from the Indomitable's position on his port flank. I've never seen anything like it. Nor have I, Rodriguez agreed. And, if we do our job right, they'll get to continue their festival in peace. He turned to his tactical officer. Commander Singh, what's our sensor picture? Sir, we have positive identification of 10,847 civilian vessels participating in the festival. No weapons signatures, no military escorts, no defensive formations. They're arranged purely for aesthetic purposes. Singh paused, consulting his displays. Sir, from a tactical standpoint, this is a nightmare. The raiders could inflict massive casualties before the civilians could even begin to disperse. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Intelligence reports indicated that the raider fleet would arrive during the opening ceremony, when all the civilian vessels would be locked in their ceremonial formations for maximum visual impact. It was exactly the kind of vulnerable target that raiders dreamed of. Admiral, called Communications Officer Lieutenant Park, were receiving a transmission from the festival coordinator. They're requesting confirmation that we won't interfere with their ceremony. Put them through. The main screen showed a being that Rodriguez recognized as one of the Harmonious Collective, her silvery form radiating the musical tones that served as her species' primary mode of communication. The universal translator rendered her words in standard Terran. Admiral Rodriguez, I am Melody of Dawnbreaking, coordinator of this peace festival. We understand that you are here for our protection, but we must ask that your vessels remain outside the ceremonial perimeter. The visual impact of military vessels would contradict the spirit of our celebration. Rodriguez exchanged glances with his staff. The festival coordinator was essentially asking him to position his fleet too far away to provide effective protection, all in the name of maintaining the proper atmosphere for their ceremony. Coordinator Melody of Dawnbreaking, Rodriguez replied carefully, "We appreciate your concerns about the ceremonial aspects of your festival. However, our intelligence indicates that hostile forces will attack during your opening ceremony. If we remain outside effective weapons range, we may not be able to prevent significant casualties." The silvery being's tone shifted to what the translator indicated was distress. "Admiral, we have invited beings from across the galaxy to celebrate peace and harmony. The presence of warships within our ceremonial space would send entirely the wrong message about our values." Captain Chen's voice came over the private command channel. "Admiral, this is a perfect example of what we've been dealing with. They're more concerned with symbolism than survival." Rodriguez muted his mic and responded quietly. "Captain, remember that this festival represents everything they've built their civilization around. To them, compromising their peaceful principles might seem worse than death." He reopened the channel to the festival coordinator. "Coordinator, perhaps we can reach a compromise. What if we position our vessels just outside your ceremonial perimeter but close enough to respond rapidly to any threats? We can minimize our sensor signatures so that we don't interfere with your displays." Melody of Dawnbreaking conferred with others off-screen before responding. "Admiral, we would accept such an arrangement, provided that your vessels power down all weapons systems during the ceremony. We cannot celebrate peace while surrounded by instruments of war." Rodriguez felt his stomach tighten. The coordinator was asking him to essentially disarm his fleet during the exact time when they expected to be attacked. "Coordinator, I understand your position, but powering down our weapons would leave your festival completely vulnerable. Our intelligence indicates." "Admiral," the coordinator interrupted, her tones taking on a harmonic quality that the translator indicated was absolute certainty, "if we cannot trust in the power of peace during our own festival, then we have already lost everything we stand for. Please respect our wishes." The communication ended, leaving Rodriguez staring at a blank screen. Around the bridge, his officers exchanged looks of disbelief. "Sir," Commander Singh said carefully, "they're asking us to disarm ourselves during an expected enemy attack. That's not just naive, it's suicidal." "For them and for us," added Captain Chen over the comm, "if we can't use our weapons, we can't protect them or ourselves." Rodriguez considered his options. He could override the coordinator's wishes and position his fleet for maximum tactical advantage, but that would mean violating the sovereignty of the people he was trying to protect. Alternatively, he could comply with their request and hope that his ships could power up their weapons fast enough when the raiders arrived. "Admiral," called sensor operator Lieutenant Kim, "long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace disturbances at bearing 27 Mark 8. Multiple contacts, estimated arrival time 23 minutes. How many contacts?" "Preliminary analysis suggests 47 vessels, various sizes. Configuration matches raider fleet intelligence profiles." Rodriguez made his decision. "All ships, take positions at the edge of the ceremonial perimeter as requested. Power down weapon systems but maintain engines and shields on standby. I want every ship ready to move to combat positions the moment those raiders arrive." "Sir," Singh protested, "if we power down our weapons, it will take at least 90 seconds to bring them back online. The raiders could inflict massive casualties in that time." "I'm aware of that, Commander. But we're not just protecting their bodies, we're protecting their way of life. If we override their wishes, we become conquerors rather than protectors." Rodriguez turned to the communications station. "Lieutenant Park, patch me through to the festival coordinator." When Melody of Dawnbreaking appeared on screen again, Rodriguez spoke with formal respect. "Coordinator, we are complying with your request to power down our weapons during the ceremony. However, I must inform you that hostile forces will arrive in approximately 20 minutes. When they do, we will need to power up our systems and move to defensive positions. I need your permission to do so without further consultation." The coordinator's silvery form seemed to dim slightly. Admiral, you are certain that hostile forces are coming? Yes, Coordinator. Our intelligence is quite specific. They plan to attack during your opening ceremony when all your vessels are in formation. And, if you power up your weapons during our ceremony, we'll be able to protect your people, but it will mean that your festival becomes a battlefield. I'm sorry, but those are the only options available. Melody of Dawnbreaking was quiet for a long moment, her form shifting through different harmonic patterns. Finally, she spoke, her tones carrying what the translator indicated was profound sadness. Admiral, do what you must to protect our people. If our ceremony must be interrupted by violence, then, so be it. Perhaps this will teach us something about the true nature of peace. As the communication ended, Rodriguez felt a weight settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just a military operation anymore, it was a lesson in the harsh realities of survival for a species that had forgotten such lessons existed. All ships, he broadcast to his task force, the festival coordinator has given us permission to engage hostile forces as necessary. However, be aware that we are protecting people who have never seen combat before. Minimize collateral damage and be prepared to provide psychological support to civilian survivors. The next 15 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. The festival's opening ceremony began with elaborate light displays and harmonic performances that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. 10,000 vessels moved in perfectly synchronized patterns, their passengers celebrating the beauty of peace and cooperation. Contact! Lieutenant Kim called out. 47 vessels dropping out of hyperspace at bearing 27 Mark 8. They're moving to attack positions. All ships, power up weapons systems and move to intercept positions, Rodriguez ordered. Deploy defensive formations around the festival perimeter. Throughout the festival fleet, the celebration abruptly halted as massive Terran warships suddenly blazed to life with energy signatures. The civilians watched in confusion and growing fear as their peaceful ceremony transformed into a military operation. Captain Chen's voice came over the command channel. Admiral, lead raider elements are launching missiles. Target appears to be the main ceremonial platform where the coordinators are located. Acknowledged. All ships, engage incoming missiles. Do not allow any ordnance to reach the civilian fleet. The space around the festival suddenly erupted with defensive fire as 18 Terran warships opened up with their point defense systems. Streams of energy reached out to intercept the incoming missiles, creating a brilliant display that was unfortunately visible to the terrified civilians below. Rodriguez watched his tactical display as the raider fleet spread out to engage from multiple directions. It was a sophisticated attack plan designed to overwhelm any defensive force and maximize casualties among the civilian targets. Sir, Singh reported, raider vessels are using the civilian ships as shields. They're maneuvering so that we can't engage them without risk of hitting festival participants. Clever, Rodriguez acknowledged. They're counting on us being unwilling to accept civilian casualties. All ships, microjump to new positions. Get clear firing solutions on the raiders without civilian vessels in the line of fire. The Terran ships vanished from their positions and reappeared elsewhere in the system, using short-range hyperspace jumps to reposition themselves for optimal tactical advantage. It was a maneuver that the raiders clearly hadn't expected from what they assumed would be a conventional defensive deployment. Captain Chen's Indomitable engaged the lead raider squadron, her ship's massive firepower quickly overwhelming their shields and destroying 2 vessels in rapid succession. The other Terran ships followed suit, their superior technology and training giving them a decisive advantage. But the raiders had one advantage that the humans had to respect: they were willing to target civilians without hesitation. When it became clear that they were outmatched in direct combat, they began launching attacks specifically designed to maximize casualties among the festival participants. Admiral, Chen reported, Raider Squadron 3 is launching torpedoes at the main civilian formation. Their course and speed indicate they're designed to detonate inside the festival perimeter, not to hit specific targets. Rodriguez realized what the raiders were doing. They couldn't win the military engagement, so they were trying to inflict as many civilian casualties as possible before being destroyed. It was a final act of spite that would traumatize the peaceful council species for generations. All ships, priority intercept on those torpedoes. Whatever it takes, do not let them reach the civilians. The destroyer Valiant positioned herself directly in the path of the incoming torpedoes, taking hits on her forward shields to prevent the weapons from reaching their intended targets. The cruiser Defiance used her point defense systems to intercept 3 more torpedoes, while the Indomitable destroyed the launchers with a precisely aimed particle beam. But one torpedo got through. It detonated amid a formation of 7 civilian vessels carrying families to the Peace Festival. The explosion vaporized 4 ships instantly and damaged 3 others so severely that their life support systems failed. Rodriguez watched the tactical display with growing rage as he realized that over 2,000 innocent beings had just been murdered for no other reason than pure malice. This wasn't warfare, it was terrorism. All ships, new rules of engagement. Destroy every raider vessel. No survivors, no quarter, no mercy. They want to target civilians? Then, they've forfeited any right to consideration. The Terran Task Force's response was swift and brutal. The remaining raider vessels found themselves facing the full fury of a military force that had just watched innocent people die. Ships that had been designed to prey on the helpless discovered what it meant to face an enemy that could fight back. Within 30 minutes, it was over. The last raider vessel was destroyed as it tried to flee the system, its crew having learned too late that attacking peaceful civilians in the presence of Terran forces was a fatal mistake. But the victory felt hollow as Rodriguez surveyed the aftermath. The Peace Festival was in ruins, its participants traumatized by their first exposure to organized violence. Emergency medical ships were moving among the survivors, treating the wounded and providing psychological support to beings who had never imagined such horrors were possible. Melody of Dawnbreaking appeared on his screen again, her silvery form now dim with grief. Admiral Rodriguez, we thank you for protecting us. Without your intervention, the casualties would have been far worse. Coordinator, I'm sorry we couldn't prevent all casualties. We did everything we could, but... Admiral, she interrupted, her tones carrying a quality he hadn't heard before, a kind of profound sadness mixed with newfound understanding. You saved over 1 million of our people. 2,000 died because evil beings decided to target the innocent. That is not your failure, it is the failure of those who chose to commit such acts. Rodriguez was surprised by the coordinator's response. He had expected blame, anger, or at least resentment toward the military forces whose presence had failed to completely protect the festival. Coordinator, what will happen to your festival now? Will you continue the ceremony? Melody of Dawnbreaking's form seemed to brighten slightly. Admiral, we will continue, but it will be different now. We will add a new component to our celebration, a memorial to those who died, and a recognition of those who risked their lives to protect others. We have learned that true peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of those willing to defend it. As Rodriguez signed off, he realized that something important had happened. The Galactic Council species had experienced their first taste of genuine warfare, and, rather than being broken by it, they seemed to be growing stronger. They were beginning to understand that their peaceful civilization was not a given right, but a precious treasure that required protection. The question now was whether they would learn the larger lesson, that in a universe containing both good and evil, strength and compassion must work together if good is to prevail. 6 months after the attack on the Peace Festival, Commander Zethkar stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned vessel Courageous Defender, watching as his crew conducted their first live-fire training exercise. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperation between Council engineering and Terran military technology, sleek and beautiful in the Council tradition, but possessing defensive capabilities that would have been unimaginable just a year ago. Target acquired, announced Weapons Officer Kleindar from the bridge. The young Sharoni had volunteered for the new Council Defense Corps after witnessing the festival attack, her crystalline form now glowing with confidence rather than fear. Requesting permission to engage. Zethkar activated his communicator. Permission granted. Remember, controlled bursts, minimal energy expenditure. Through the viewport, he watched as coherent energy beams reached out from his ship to strike a remote target drone. The beams were significantly less powerful than those mounted on Terran warships, designed more for disabling hostile vessels than destroying them outright, but they represented a fundamental shift in Council philosophy. Dr. Yelera approached from behind, her own glow reflecting a mixture of pride and lingering uncertainty. "Zethkar, watching you command a warship still feels strange. A year ago, none of us would have believed such a thing was possible." "A year ago, we lived in a different universe," Zethkar replied, his scales showing the deep blue of determination. "Or rather, we thought we did. The universe hasn't changed, but our understanding of it has." The past 6 months had brought dramatic changes to the Galactic Council. The attack on the Peace Festival had shattered many illusions, but it had also galvanized the Council species in ways that their leaders had never anticipated. Rather than retreating into isolation or becoming dependent on Terran protection, they had chosen a third path, learning to defend themselves while maintaining their core values. "Status report," Zethkar called as he returned to the bridge. Navigation Officer Plix looked up from her station, her forearms moving efficiently across the controls that had once managed only peaceful traffic. "Training exercise completed successfully, Commander. All weapons systems performed within acceptable parameters. No technical difficulties. Excellent. Helm, set course for Rendezvous Point Alpha. We have a diplomatic mission to Sector 7751. Dr. Yillara settled into her station. She had officially joined the Courageous Defenders crew as Chief Science Officer and Cultural Liaison. "Zethkar, I still find it remarkable that we're conducting diplomatic missions with a military vessel." "Doctor, this is the new reality," replied Commander Hayes, the Terran officer who served as the ship's military advisor. His presence aboard the ship was part of the ongoing cooperation agreement between the Council and the Terran Federation. In a universe where threats exist, diplomacy backed by defensive capability is more effective than diplomacy alone. The Courageous Defender was one of 12 vessels in the first class of Council Defense Corps ships. Each was crewed by volunteers from various Council species who had completed extensive training with Terran military instructors. The ships were designed to patrol Council space, protect civilian traffic, and serve as a deterrent to potential raiders. As they traveled through hyperspace toward their destination, Zethkar reflected on the changes that had swept through Council civilization. The process hadn't been easy. Many species had initially resisted the idea of developing military capabilities, arguing that it contradicted their fundamental values. The debate had raged for months in the Grand Assembly. But the evidence was overwhelming. In the 6 months following the festival attack, Terran forces had eliminated 47 raider bases hidden throughout Council space. They had rescued over 8,000 enslaved Council citizens and recovered the remains of thousands more who had died in captivity. The scope of the predation had shocked even the most naive Council species into accepting the need for change. "Commander," called Communications Officer Threnoke, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Rodriguez aboard the Retribution." "Put him through." The main screen activated to show the familiar figure of the Terran Admiral who had become something of a legend among Council species. His task force had been responsible for eliminating the raider threat, and his patient mentoring had helped the Council species develop their own defensive capabilities. "Commander Zethkar," Rodriguez said with obvious satisfaction, "congratulations on completing your training cruise successfully. How does it feel to command the first Council military vessel in 12,000 years?"